hold open. Here's where it gets strange. The year is 1902. You are standing inside a ruined temple complex in Epidaurus, Greece. The air smells of ancient stone and dry grass. The Mediterranean sun is brutal overhead. A German archaeologist named Paul Cavadias is brushing dirt away from a carved stone tablet that has been buried for nearly 2,000 years. He reads the inscription slowly. It describes a healing ritual performed at this exact location in 300 BCE, a ritual prescribed by physicians. A ritual attended by hundreds of sick pilgrims who traveled weeks on foot to reach this place. The ritual did not involve herbs. It did not involve surgery. It did not involve any substance known to ancient or modern medicine. It involved dogs. Specifically, the sacred dogs of the Temple of Asclepius. Dogs that were bred, housed, and maintained by Greek physicians as medical instruments. Dogs that were directed to approach patients lying on stone sleeping platforms in the inner sanctum of the temple. Dogs that would find the sick, lie beside them, and lick their wounds and faces while the patients slept. Cavadias puts down his brush. He has found hundreds of stone tablets describing the same ritual. Tablets recording the names of patients, their conditions, and their outcomes after the dogs had visited them. The outcomes are extraordinary, and nobody in 1902 can explain why. Part 1. The Temple of the Healing Dogs. The year is 300 BCE. You are a patient at the Asclepion of Epidaurus. You have walked 11 days from Athens. Your body is exhausted, but it is not your body that brought you here. It is your mind. You have not slept properly in months. You feel nothing. The world has gone flat and gray. The physicians in Athens gave you herbs. They gave you rest. Nothing changed. Someone told you about Epidaurus. About the dogs. You are led into the abaton, the inner sleeping hall. The stone floor is cool beneath you. Oil lamps flicker on the walls. Around you, dozens of other patients lie on simple stone platforms. Then the dogs come. Large, calm, moving between the patients with a deliberateness that later visitors would describe as almost purposeful. They find you. One lies beside you. Its warmth presses against your side. It rests its head on your chest. You sleep. For the first time in months, you sleep deeply. Here's where it gets strange. The tablets Cavadias found in 1902 were not describing a spiritual experience, they were describing medical outcomes. Inscribed by physicians, recorded in the same systematic way modern hospitals record treatment results. The inscriptions describe patients arriving with what the ancient Greeks called melancholia, a condition Hippocrates had described a century earlier as a persistent state of fear and despondency without obvious cause, a condition that modern psychiatry now classifies as major depressive disorder. And the tablets describe those patients leaving Epidaurus changed, not cured, changed. The Greeks were precise in their language. They did not claim the dogs had performed a miracle. They claimed the dogs had done something specific to the human body that herbs and rest could not do alone. They just didn't know what. But the next discovery was even stranger. Part 2. The same answer on every continent. The year is 2015. You are in a research archive at the University of Pennsylvania. A historian named Andrew Rowan is cross-referencing ancient medical texts from 6 separate civilizations: Greek, Egyptian, Chinese, Roman, Aztec, Native American. He is looking for patterns. He finds one. Every major ancient civilization on Earth independently documented the therapeutic use of dogs for conditions that match the modern clinical description of depression and anxiety. Every one, with no documented contact between them at the relevant historical periods. Ancient Egyptian medical papyri from 1500 BCE describe dogs kept in healing temples along the Nile. Traditional Chinese medicine texts from the Han Dynasty, approximately 200 BCE, document dog warmth applied to the abdomen as a treatment for what translators describe as hollow sadness. Roman physicians, including Galen, writing in 150 CE, documented dogs used in recovery facilities for patients with conditions of the spirit. The Aztec civilization developed a specific dog breed, the Xoloitzcuintli, bred specifically for its body heat, and used consistently in healing rituals for patients described as suffering from weakness of heart. Native American healing traditions across multiple distinct nations independently documented dogs sleeping beside patients with grief sickness. 5 continents, 6 civilizations, no communication between them, the same answer. And this is where everything changes. Because the question is no longer whether ancient people believed dogs could heal depression. The question is whether they were right. And the answer that emerged from a laboratory in Japan in 2009 should have made global news. It didn't. Part 3. The Science Ancient Healers Couldn't Name. The year is 2009. You are in a behavioral neuroscience laboratory at Azabu University in Sagamihara, Japan. A researcher named Miho Nagasawa has just finished analyzing blood samples from a study unlike any conducted before. The study is simple, almost absurdly simple. Human subjects interact with their dogs for 30 minutes. Blood samples are taken before and after. The samples are analyzed for oxytocin, the hormone associated with bonding, trust, calm, and social connection, the hormone that floods a mother's bloodstream when she looks at her newborn child. The results are published in the journal Hormones and Behavior. Oxytocin levels in the human subjects rose significantly after 30 minutes of dog interaction. But that wasn't the disturbing part. The oxytocin levels in the dogs rose simultaneously, the same hormone, in both species. At the same time, triggered by mutual gaze, Nagasawa's team had stumbled onto something extraordinary. The human-dog bond, forged over 15,000 years of coevolution, had produced a biological feedback loop. A shared neurochemical response to eye contact that exists between no other two species on Earth except human mothers and their infants. Ancient healers observed the effect of this loop for thousands of years. They had no name for oxytocin. They had no concept of neurochemistry. They had no framework for understanding what was happening at a molecular level when a patient lay beside a dog in the Abaton at Epidaurus. They only knew that something happened, and they were right about what it did. A 2012 study published in Psychoneuroendocrinology found that dog interaction reduced cortisol levels, the primary stress hormone, measurably within minutes. A 2019 study from Washington State University measured cortisol in students exposed to dogs for 10 minutes and found reductions equivalent to those produced by pharmaceutical anxiolytics. 10 minutes. The sacred dogs of Epidaurus spent entire nights beside their patients. The Greeks were not performing a ritual, they were administering a dose. But the question that remains open is darker than the answer. Part 4. What happened to the healing dogs? The year is 391 CE. You are in Alexandria, Egypt. The Roman Emperor Theodosius has just issued an edict. The ancient temples are to be closed. The healing traditions practiced within them are to be abandoned. The sacred animals maintained by the temples are to be dispersed. The dogs of Epidaurus disappear from the historical record. Within 2 centuries, the systematic therapeutic use of dogs in formal medical settings has vanished from Western medicine entirely. Then something happened. 700 years pass, then 1,000, then 1,200. The practice does not reappear in Western medical literature until 1792, when a physician named William Tuke at the York Retreat in England begins allowing mental health patients to care for small animals as part of their treatment. Tuke does not know about Epidaurus. He has never read the tablets Cavadias would not find for another century. He arrives at the same conclusion independently through observation alone. The patients who cared for animals recovered differently from those who did not. He cannot explain why. He writes it down anyway. And here's where it gets strange. In 1961, a child psychotherapist named Boris Levinson at Yeshiva University in New York publishes a paper describing something he had noticed accidentally. His dog Jingles had been present during a session with a severely withdrawn child. The child, who had refused to speak to Levinson for months, began talking to the dog, then talking about the dog, then talking. Levinson calls the phenomenon pet-facilitated therapy. His colleagues laugh at him at the 1961 American Psychological Association conference. They ask him how much Jingles charges per session. Levinson keeps publishing. By 2023, the American Psychiatric Association has formally recognized animal-assisted therapy as a legitimate adjunct treatment for depression, PTSD, and anxiety disorders. It took Western medicine 1,200 years to rediscover what the physicians of Epidaurus knew in 300 BCE. The door they closed in 391 CE stayed closed for over a millennium. Part 5. What ancient healers understood that we are still mapping. The year is 2023. You are in a research facility at the University of British Columbia. A team led by researcher John Ignatowicz has just completed the largest clinical study of dog-assisted intervention for major depressive disorder ever conducted. Published in PLOS One, the study tracked 216 patients over 12 weeks. Half received standard care plus structured weekly sessions with trained therapy dogs. The results are unambiguous. The dog-assisted group showed significantly greater reductions in depressive symptoms, greater reductions in anxiety, greater improvements in social functioning. The dogs were not replacing medication. They were doing something medication was not doing alone. Something the Greek physicians at Epidaurus had observed, something the Egyptian healers had observed, something that emerged independently on 5 continents across thousands of years of human observation. But here is the question nobody in that research facility in British Columbia has fully answered. Why dogs specifically, not cats, not horses, not any other domesticated animal? The mutual oxytocin gaze response that Nagasawa documented in 2009 exists between humans and dogs and nowhere else. No other animal on Earth looks into human eyes the way dogs do. No other animal triggers the same neurochemical response through eye contact alone. Wolves do not do this. The closest living relatives of domestic dogs do not do this. This behavior evolved specifically in dogs during the 15,000 years of coevolution with humans. It was selected for. Deliberately or accidentally, the humans who lived alongside dogs bred the animals that looked at them, bonded with them, triggered something in their brain chemistry. And then, somewhere in that ancient relationship, healers noticed what the looking was doing to the sick. They built temples around it. They bred specific animals for it. They administered it as medicine, and then someone closed the temples. And for 1,200 years, the knowledge sat buried in stone tablets under the soil of Epidaurus, while the Western world searched for the answer to depression in herbs and surgeries, and eventually pharmaceuticals. The tablets were there the whole time. The dogs were there the whole time. And the question that the data from British Columbia keeps opening is not whether the ancient healers were right. They were right. The question is what else they knew that we have not yet found in the soil. What other tablets are still buried? What other doors were closed in 391 CE and have not yet been reopened? The healing dogs of Epidaurus are gone, but the neurochemistry they were triggering is still inside every human being alive today, still waiting for the right pair of eyes to look into.